G'day everyone, and welcome to the third and final video in week 11 of our admin law course. This week we've been learning about the role and the powers of the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman has actually been a screamingly good success as an administrative agency. It's probably a pity that more people don't know about the Ombudsman, but overall, the Office of the Ombudsman has become a crucial and familiar part of public administration in Australia. In fact, it's been so successful that in the nearly 40 years since the first Australian Ombudsman, a range of specific purpose ombudsmen have been developed. So, for instance, there's a Defence Ombudsman whose principal role is to assist defence members who are unhappy with administrative decisions made by the Department of Defence relating to their work. There's a Fair Work Ombudsman who assists people with complaints under the Fair Work Act. Then there are a range of industry ombudsmen who look beyond government decisions and can actually assist people who are aggrieved by decisions of private companies in a range of regulated industries. So, for instance, there's a banking industry ombudsman, an energy industry ombudsman, a telecommunications industry ombudsman. There's a specific ombudsman for the postal industry. And perhaps the most specific ombudsman is one appointed to assist overseas students in Australia who have complaints about their education providers, particularly some of the private providers at the dodgier end of the scale who've been operating in recent years. These industry ombudsmen are usually actually financed by the industry themselves, believe it or not. So if someone makes a complaint, let's say a complaint to the telecommunications ombudsman about, say, Optus, it'll actually be Optus that picks up the bill for the investigation. This is why if you're complaining to a company in one of these industries, saying the magic words "complaint to the Ombudsman" can often be enough to get you past the unhelpful call centre staff and deal with someone who might actually have a chance of resolving your problem, because they'd much rather help you over the phone than potentially pay a much larger amount for an ombudsman's investigation. In the rest of this video, though, I want to talk about procedure. How does someone make a complaint to the ombudsman, and what happens when they do? First and foremost, the ombudsman is usually not intended to be your first port of call. The ombudsman will expect, and in most cases will demand, that before a person complains to the Ombudsman, they must first try to resolve their concern directly with the department. So it will usually be expected that a person will seek a statement of reasons and in some way seek a reconsideration of the decision by the department before going to the Ombudsman. Now, this isn't exactly a rule. Remember, the Ombudsman has the power to investigate even without a complaint. But by and large, the chances of the Ombudsman taking on a matter where the applicant hasn't made reasonable efforts to resolve the issue directly with the department is pretty slim. Let's say you or your client have dealt with the department and the department has finally just put up all the shutters and said no. You have the options of judicial review in the court or an application to the AAT, but both of those can be expensive. The third option is the Ombudsman. An application to the Ombudsman can be in any format whatsoever. There is a complaint form, and that's probably the best way to start the process because obviously the form is guiding you to provide the information that the Ombudsman considers will be helpful. But the initial complaint can be made by phone, by email, by letter, or any other way. The idea is that people who might have limited English or limited education or limited means still shouldn't be prevented from complaining to the Ombudsman. In many cases, after receiving the initial complaint, staff from the Ombudsman's office will come back and seek further information. From there, the Ombudsman has a wide range of options. They might commence an investigation. However, they might also come back to the complainant with some friendly advice on how the issue might be resolved, or some friendly advice that the complainant really does seem to have it wrong. They might refer the complaint back to the department for handling, which is sometimes a way of gently hinting to the department that they just might have gotten this one wrong and perhaps they should have another look. All of this flows from the fact that the Ombudsman is not required to investigate a complaint. So they begin by having a look, and they either investigate, send it to the department, or come back to the complainant, whatever seems most sensible. If there is an investigation, then the Ombudsman has those extraordinary powers that we talked about in the second video. They can demand pretty much whatever information or documents they need. That doesn't mean they'll show them to the complainant though. The whole point is that the Ombudsman can see things that you and I can't. Once the Ombudsman has investigated, they must return to the complainant to explain the outcome. In an ideal world, the outcome will be that the department should reconsider its decision and you have a very happy client. Sometimes the outcome might be that your client's decision is not going to change, but the department will be given recommendations to change its processes going forward. This might not get your client everything they want, but most people will feel like the effort was worthwhile if they know that they have helped to create a fairer process. If the Ombudsman makes a report which does suggest that the department should reconsider its decision, then obviously it can be quite helpful to re-establish communication with the department sooner rather than later, so you can get the change to the decision moving. So there we have it for this week. This week we've learned about the Ombudsman, about the fact that their role is to stand up for ordinary citizens, especially in circumstances where they may not be able to stand up for themselves. We've learned that the Ombudsman has quite extraordinary powers of investigation, but correspondingly limited powers, in fact, basically no power, to actually compel an outcome. The Ombudsman relies on influence rather than power. Departments know that if the Ombudsman says they got it wrong, they ignore the Ombudsman at their peril, because the Ombudsman can ultimately report to Parliament and those reports become public. We know, however, that the Ombudsman is not intended to be the first option for conflict resolution, and the Ombudsman is not obliged to take on anyone's case. I'm a big fan of the Ombudsman. It's almost too good to be true, the idea that the government actually established an office whose sole purpose is to check up on the government and tell them when they're doing things wrong. The Ombudsman's great. Next week is our final week of course material. We're going to look at some controversies in administrative law, and then I'm going to walk you through a big long flowchart, which is my guide to tackling admin law problems. We are nearly there. See you next week.